What's up, party people? Welcome to Best Ball Live. My name is Greg Smith. I'm your host. Joining me, one of my old compatriots from back in the 2QBs days, Anthony Amico at Amico on Twitter. Anthony, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, Greg? Yeah, we're pumped, man. I mean, it's it's always good to talk to you. We've done this a few times between your various outlets, and it's nice to do a live drafting show. I mean, this is the best time of the year. This is why we're here. Let's dominate the draft. Let's get a good team and get the summer off to a good start.
Kevin O'Brien saying what's up, the FF engineer. What's up, Kevin? Thanks for joining us. Thanks for drafting with us. I think Kevin's in the league with us here. We drew the 10th pick in this Superflex Best Ball Slim. And I think the 10th pick is really interesting in this format because you might not get the elite of the elite quarterbacks or the elite of the elite running backs, but you might get one of the three elite tight ends in that spot. You might, and this is tight end premium, again, FFPC drafts. Right. You might get, or you probably will get, the top wide receiver on your board in that spot. And there will still be some good quarterbacks and some good running backs. So it's a very interesting position in the draft order to have to navigate. Do you have any thoughts kind of in the abstract about what you expect from the 10th pick or what you think is like the best general strategy without, maybe naming players specifically?
So I mean, in terms of what I would expect, like I mean, just looking at, I guess, the ADP on FFPC, like it seems like at least the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks will be gone. It seems like the top 2 or 3 running backs will be gone. So ostensibly, I think we're going to be picking from like that second tier running back and that second tier quarterback, kind of whoever makes it to us and whatever happens. And I think that's right. I mean, the FFPC format, Superflex, Slim, there's really only one flex. There's 2 flexes, but one of them is the Superflex spot. So
QB spot, yeah.
Yeah, so we're really playing a 2 running back, 2 receiver league with 1 flex, which is, I mean, it's a little light, I think, versus what a lot of the other formats are. Even the normal FFPC format, obviously, is a little heavier in the skill positions. So we want to weigh those quarterbacks, those tight ends a little bit more, I think. And, we'll see how that impacts how we draft tonight.
Yeah, only being required to start 2 wide receivers just kind of naturally pumps the position down in value a little bit. Or at least the thirst to draft that position is way lower. I don't necessarily think the players are less valuable, especially the best of the best guys, and even some of like the pretty good and really good guys in those, like, I don't know, in that 3rd to 8th round range. But you just don't need that many wide receivers. So right. you have a lot more flexibility in terms of how you want to attack the other positions in the early rounds. And you kind of have to with quarterback and running back because those positions are a little bit more limited or scarce. So, yeah, we're about to start here. Frank Duffy is joining us again. We got Tube Socks 000 saying, how do I win something? I am going to get to that. Last week we had a giveaway where someone had to put into the league chat who's the lowest ranked quarterback in the FFPC database that week. And it's since changed, and it won't be the same question again this time around, but it'll be something similar to that. I'm going to ask you guys to look up something in the draft room, post the answer in the draft chat, and the first person to post the answer is going to win that FFPC draft coupon worth $35 to spend on another draft here like this one. Anthony, before we get to our pick here, why don't you let the folks know where they can find your work, what you are working on, kind of what they can expect from you this offseason.
Yeah, so right now, most of the fantasy stuff is going to be at either Footballguys or Establish the Run. We're doing mostly the Dynasty content at ETR, Dynasty ranks, a couple Dynasty articles. We're working on a couple things behind the scenes that I think people will like there. And then over at Footballguys, some best ball stuff, a lot of projections. So we're getting a little bit of everything, I think, between the 2 sites, and I'm excited for everything this summer.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you're turning out. You work for a couple great sites there in ETR and Footballguys. Be sure to be following Anthony on Twitter at Amico, and make sure you follow 4for4 at 4for4 football. If you sign up for a 4for4 subscription, you will get a $35 voucher to use here at the FFPC. So go get that sub at 4for4 and make it happen. So we are still a few picks away here. Let's pull up the draft board, see what's going on. 4 out of the 5 first picks were QBs, and Christian McCaffrey there to Frank Duffy at the 3 spot. This is about par for the course in my experience doing this format. The elite quarterbacks are valued as such. It is interesting to see Josh Allen go ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Dak Prescott going there at 6. So, yeah, the QB thirst is real. And at this point, like, when it gets to us at 10, like, I don't even know if I want to take a quarterback because all the best ones are gone, right? And at that point, after it wraps around to us in the second round, we could maybe get a little bit more leverage on a different position, whether that's running back or tight end or whatever. But now we're on deck here. What are you thinking about this pick?
I mean, I have to say I'm a little surprised that like Herbert went.
Yeah.
But that opens this up for us. So I would have said maybe we go Kelsey, but now it seems
smashed the button on Kelsey if he felt it was a 10.
Yeah, now it seems tough. I mean, we have to decide between these. Either we want to go Russ Wilson or we want these elite running backs. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. It's tough, I think, to not leave the first 2 rounds without a QB in this kind of format, but I think that's kind of where we're heading right now. I'm kind of leaning towards Kamara. I don't know how you feel.
So is Kamara your pick of this top tier of running backs that are listed here? Kamara, Henry, Saquon, Zeke?
Yeah, I think in full PPR. He is. It doesn't have, to me, like the questions that I have about the other guys.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we make this pick, we're definitely not getting Wilson back. He's going to go probably to one of these teams at the turn. But I agree with you. I think that there's more value in trying to lock up a Kamara here. So let's make that the pick. And I mean, if Russell Wilson does come back, that's a pick we can consider. But I'd be just as happy to see one of these tight ends or another running back come back to us. We could even look at, being the first team to draft a wide receiver as well, whether that's with Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, or whoever else is, the top wide receiver on your board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're in good position here, honestly. Like the 10th spot, we missed out on the elite guys, but this like second group of players is very good and pretty deep. Not deep to make it all the way back to the guys who picked at the top of the first, but deep enough where I think kind of no matter what happens with these 4 picks, I feel like we're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's looking good. I mean, there isn't really a bad draft position in Superflex. It's one of the reasons I like this format so much is that even if you don't get those elite quarterbacks or elite running backs at the very top, if you're in the middle, you're still going to get a good player. And if you're at the end of the first round, you're going to get 2 really good players because the quarterback position just becomes a little bit more valuable. So we are in a spot here where one of the remaining tight ends is going to be available to us, whether that's Waller or Kittle. I think we have to consider one of them. But otherwise, yeah, it's top wide receiver available or best running back available. I don't think we're going the Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill path in round 2. Do you?
No, it just seems too soon. I mean, that's the issue, I guess, with passing on QB in round 1, right? Is that second tier or even third tier of quarterbacks gets pushed up really quickly. But I think we can make our money in the mid rounds at that position. I think here we have I have a pretty strong lean here that we just go with Kittle.
Yeah, I think that's very much the right pick. Like mostly based on the format, based on what it does for your roster construction. So we're going to pick Kittle, and then we can talk a little bit about that. Like talk to the viewers about the advantage of having an elite tight end in this sort of format. Like not just because it's tight end premium, but just kind of what it does to open up the rest of your roster.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like the tight end premium stuff, like I just think we make a big mistake in this format of like pushing all the tight ends up because to me, tight end premium really means good tight end premium. Like that's the guys who are actually going to catch passes are the ones that are going to see that premium bonus. And, Kittle's obviously one of the best. So, getting him, I think puts us in position to only draft maybe 2 tight ends in this draft, depending on how things work out. So that gives us good roster flexibility, I think, throughout the draft. If we got tight end value, we can take a tight end if the player's good and good value because we know that a guy like Kittle can satisfy the flex position. So I think this gives us a good spot early. I like that we got the running back in the first because maybe if we go Russ Kittle, we're looking at
the running back follow-up is going to be steep in round 3 if that's the way we went. But I don't think that it's unreasonable to have done something like that. And it's really going to depend on how the rest of the draft breaks for us and what quarterbacks we do end up with. By round 6, we might be telling ourselves, crap, we really should have taken Russell Wilson in the first round, right? Like, that's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of quarterbacks that I really like this year. I mean, I know we say it every year, quarterbacks very deep. And Russ, I'm not really sure that he makes it into the top group for me in terms of like true difference makers. Like he's definitely a tier 2. Yeah, he's definitely a tier 2 guy, but it's just kind of like, I don't know if he separates himself from the tier 3 guys enough, or I'm like really kicking myself that we don't have him.
Yeah, we'll find out. But I think that larger point you make about the QB position still being deep is something that is going overlooked a little bit this draft season. We're pushing these guys up, and I understand this is partially format driven, right? In Superflex best ball, you really want 3 quarterbacks. There's a pretty solid advantage to having one of the top guys if you get a top guy. I just think that we overrate our ability to judge who the top 5 guys are on a year-to-year basis. I mean, Mahomes almost certainly going to be there. Lamar Jackson almost certainly going to be there. Very strong arguments for Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson maybe. But we make those arguments for the guys who are in that second tier every season. And every season, a handful of those second and third tier quarterbacks really disappoint. Or maybe they don't even disappoint that much. It's just that someone else comes up from the depths of the QB middle class to bump all those other guys down the rankings, right? Whether that's, Ryan Tannehill or in past seasons or what, there's always going to be a value QB who leaps the ranks, and just out of circumstance. A lot of times it's game script driven. A lot of times it's, due to just a coaching philosophy. There are a lot of ways it can happen.
Right. And the position is so flat too, that it's like, I think we forget how much of this changes on touchdown variance. Yep. Aaron Rodgers had like a 9% touchdown rate last year. Like that's literally the difference between him being QB 3 and being QB like 15. Like it's a lot changes in that area. So, a ton of these guys in the middle, I think, have that opportunity. Like you said, like I think quarterbacks, 8 through 15 or something, like they're all kind of the same guy to me. So if we can get a value on a couple of those guys versus spending that first round draft capital, I think we'll be okay. But we'll see what the room does.
Well, so far the room is showing a lot of restraint on those third tier QBs, let's call them. Jalen Hurts just went at the 2-3 turn. That's about where he goes. That's where I think Sal and I took him a couple weeks ago when we did our stream. But none of these other drafters who took a quarterback in the first round double tapped the position to start. That's typical in my experience with this format. Generally, someone who took a QB in the first round is going to wrap around and do it again in the second round. So maybe these folks are listening to us and being like, oh yeah, they're right. They're making a good point about how deep the QB position is. Or maybe, this room is just a little sharper in general. Because we can't assume that everybody in the room is watching the stream. Although we do have 22 viewers. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate you showing up here for Best Ball Live. All right. So coming back to us in the third round, this is a pretty basic or standard start for us with running back, tight end. I don't think I want to go back to the well with the second tight end. Once we have that top 3 guy, my primary focus is to only draft 2 with that position and hope that can carry us. So to me, this next pick is going to come down to a quarterback, running back, or wide receiver. So I'm going to pull up the draft room here, and we can start to talk about some of the options available. Is there a position you want to look at first?
Let's glance at least the available quarterbacks just so we can get a look at what we're maybe dealing with here.
It's a good call. So Tannehill, I mentioned him, top of the ranks. Brady, Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. Like the problem is how do you differentiate between these guys, right? Like they're largely the same. Now, unless we want to take 2 back-to-back here, I have a hard time choosing between one guy or the other necessarily. Do you have a strong lean? You don't have to say who it is, but is there one quarterback in this crowd that stands out to you?
I don't know if there's one guy that stands out, but I definitely have like a preferred grouping.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
we'll see what comes to us here. I'm going to pull up the running backs next. A lot of good options here. Still some potential bell cows, which, again, in Superflex this might be the exception, right? In a 1 QB format, a lot of these guys would already be drafted. we have the luxury of potentially picking one in the third round here. Wide receiver, also just a ton of great names, right? Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, like, and even further down, like you can keep going and still get to wide receiver one types like Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Kenny Galladay, and so on. So we're up here. What are you thinking?
Who was that last pick before us? Pitts? Okay, perfect. So this is my dilemma, Greg.
Okay.
I love Joe Mixon. Like I really think that he's like a true bell cow back. I think he's like one of the last guys of that type.
Okay.
And then we have like these three quarterbacks. So I mean, the big issue is that ahead of us, only one team has a quarterback. Well, I mean, there's only two, but you know what I mean? Like there's only one quarterback taken. So we definitely risk losing all the quarterbacks if we go with Mixon. So I don't know. Like, do you think we go with a quarterback and I'll tell you who I like, or should we go with Mixon?
I'd go Mixon here.
All right, so let's do that. Let's do it then. Let's lock it in. I mean, I think we have two every week caliber running backs now.
Right.
Which is something we had discussed a little bit pre-show. Like, you know, if we can lock up running backs early, that frees us up a little later to do some fun stuff. So,
yeah, with two elite running backs, you know, theoretically, or maybe not elite is the right word, maybe just workhorse, bell cow, however you want to frame it, high volume running backs, that does free us up to do a lot. We might only need to draft 4 or 5 running backs instead of, you know, the normal 6 that you might aim for in a format like this. So, yeah, it's exciting to think about what the roster could look like and how flexible we'll be in the later rounds because of it.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and call Joe Mixon elite because I have him and Kamara both inside my top 5.
Oh, dang. Yeah, see, my problem with Mixon is the O-line. Like, I don't think I could make that bold of a ranking for him considering who he's running behind there in Cincinnati.
I mean, why are we out here if we're not going to, like, just flamethrow takes, right? I mean, we have to...
Sorry to throw the cold water on you, man.
We have to give the people something to latch onto, and, you know.
The Read Option has joined us. What's up? Thanks for showing up, hanging out with us on the stream. We're about to make our pick here in the 4th round. We're on deck, and look at the restraint in this room. Look at how few quarterbacks have been taken. I'm legitimately impressed.
This is incredible.
We are up quarterback position. We still have some viable options here. I think we probably should take one. But with that said, you could talk me into, you know, just letting it ride a little bit longer. But I don't know. I think the smart place is to take QB here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have crazy man love for Michael Thomas this year, but I don't think we can go 4 rounds without a quarterback that's going to really hurt us in this format. So I'm preferable. I'm into Burrow this year. I know that gives
Bengals
us two
Bengals.
Bengals. But I love the Bengals this year. I think that their play rate is high. They are going to throw the ball a bunch. I think they're going to throw it a bunch to Mixon. So I like Burrow if you're keen on him as well.
This is your draft. I'm just along for the ride. We're going to do it. I would have taken Tannehill there. But again, personal preference. I think all these guys are close. My main concern with Burrow again is the O-line and health in general. You know, coming back from the injury that he sustained is something that makes me a little nervous. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't worry about the injury that much, but it's in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean the injuries obviously impact these guys differently. I'm at a point with the ACLs where I just don't feel like they're that big of a deal.
Yeah, and for a quarterback, it probably matters less. I do worry that it might hurt some of the rushing production that he was giving us, but you know, we'll see.
Yeah, I think the pass rate under Zach Taylor has been so high, over expectation. Leone's looked at a lot about that, so I like that a lot.
So Kevin's chiming in here. He went with Herbert and Eckler, a different quarterback running back stack, and he's asking us to talk through that. It's not something that I typically aim to do unless it's a pass catching running back like Eckler, like Mixon. You know, there's some later round options too. Like this is not one I would target, but an example would be something like Carson Wentz and Naheem Hines. That can be appealing to me in some scenarios. But what do you think about this idea of stacking a quarterback with his running back, Anthony?
I think it's underutilized, honestly, in a lot of these formats. because we just always go to the receivers, and like the receivers definitely have the strongest correlation. Just looking back at all the data, obviously the correlation coefficients are way higher at receiver, but they're still pretty good at running back. If you're getting the pass catcher, like you said, you're going to get a little bump there. But, sometimes it's just nice to stack an offense and say, hey, I think this offense is going to be really good. I think they're going to score points. Every week I'm expecting to get some scores here. And, that's how I'm looking at Cincy. Like, maybe Joe Burrow doesn't throw like 5 touchdowns to Joe Mixon this year, but I think that the Bengals are going to outscore their ADP in terms of like what we'd expect. So that's why I really like them. And I think that's always a great reason to go QB running back in these kinds of formats, especially if you're going with like a more hyper fragile draft strategy where like you're kind of all in on those running backs. It makes sense to almost double down and make sure that you have those like all those touchdowns kind of covered.
Yeah, well, and there's a cushion or a floor there that you get when you pair the running game with the passing game too, right? If the QB gets hurt, maybe they lean more on the running back. Although generally, if a quarterback gets hurt, that's bad for the offense overall. And in that case, I don't want the running back. But the other way of looking at it is something that's more appealing, right? If the running back gets hurt and the QB is just throwing all the time, that can work out just fine. We'll have to see if and when we might want to stack further with Burrow, or if we want to look to other quarterbacks to stack with. Something I do want to kind of monitor throughout this draft with you, Anthony, is the idea of ADP of a quarterback versus the ADP of his receivers. Because we talk a lot about stacking, right? But in some cases, the ADP doesn't quite line up. Like I mentioned Carson Wentz earlier. He's the QB 19 in FFPC ADP the last time I checked. But all of his wide receivers are outside the top 45 of wide receiver ADP. And it's not like he has an elite tight end. I guess Naheem Hines helps, but I don't really understand how those ADPs, relate to each other. There's an incongruity there between how high the quarterback is being drafted and how low the wide receivers are being drafted. So either the wide receivers are too low or the quarterback is too high. And there are a lot of instances like that. Are there any maybe besides Wentz that stand out to you? And it doesn't have to be specific to FFPC, but just general rankings or ADP where you see where a certain quarterback is being valued and it just doesn't quite jive with where his weapons are being valued. Does that question make sense?
No, yeah. I mean, this is something that we've looked at. I mean, even when I was back at RotoViz, this was something like that I feel like Kevin Cole, Fantasy Douche, like those guys were all over. Just kind of identifying that gap. So it's tough this year because I feel like, obviously some of your more premium stacks, you're not going to, or, tandems, you're not going to have that. So let me just think about that first. Oh, well, I think Kirk Cousins is like one that stands out to me kind of as like the inverse where the receivers go really high.
Sure.
And Cousins kind of does not. So I like Minnesota from that angle. Quarterbacks that would be underrated. I mean, I'm gonna throw out Daniel Jones. I mean, you can tell me he stinks, but like
he does. But again, it's like where he's being drafted.
Galladay is going pretty high.
Yeah, the price is really easy to stomach. Like you're not risking much when you take him where you take him.
Yeah, so that's probably the guy. I mean. Because a bunch of, there's a lot of these quarterbacks like they either run or they have like a go-to player that we're drafting. And Daniel Jones is kind of both. Like he runs, He has a go-to receiver. We assume in Galladay.
And he has plenty of other weapons that might not individually be great, but between Engram and Shepard and Slayton and Saquon, of course, right? He just has so many things he can do with the football that if he takes even a slight step forward in terms of getting through those progressions or, understanding his own offense, there is room for him just to kind of get the ball out a little quicker, figure out, how to use all of his weapons and therefore have a good season. Like that's within the range of outcomes. And when you add in the rushing floor that he offers, I mean, you're not that far from him being a top 20 quarterback. It's exactly. Very conceivable.
Totally agree.
We are on deck. Quarterback has thinned out considerably, but still some usable guys left here. Fields, Cousins, Fitzpatrick, Wentz, Mayfield, Tua, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, and then there's a little bit of a drop off there to Goff, and then the timeshare types. We could look at other positions. Running back.
I'm surprised that Fields is so high on this. Like Fields and Lance are both like way higher in this format than they are in like a bunch of the other formats that I play in. And it's interesting to me because I mean in Superflex especially, like, you know, Fields not playing like the start of the season is kind of like a big deal to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I assume he's going to be starting within the first few weeks. That tends to be how the highly drafted rookies go. I guess Fields didn't get drafted quite as high as some of the other rookies who went in round 1, but
right.
I don't know. Is Andy Dalton the answer there or the future there? No.
I would imagine no. Yeah.
So running back, we're looking at Carson, Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Etienne, Mike Davis at the top. Wide receiver, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase. So there's a stacking opportunity. Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Julio Jones. And then tight end, Noah Fant, Dallas Goedert, Tyler Higbee is who's on top. We got about 20 seconds. What do you want to do with this pick?
I mean, I kind of want to take Mike Evans. I just feel like this guy smashes every year. Like
I'm into it. I'm gonna push the button on him. I mean,
right, cool.
And that's a situation where I think a lot of people would just immediately think, oh, I got to keep stacking. Let's take Jamar Chase. But you're right about Evans. Like the dude is a consistent producer, still on one of the best teams in the league. I don't think he should have fallen that far.
Yeah, and I don't want to reach too far for these stacks. I mean, we already have Mixon with Burrow, so if we miss that on Chase, it's not the worst thing in the world. We want to keep our eyes on some of these quarterbacks also. So, I'm comfortable, I think, right now with our position.
Yeah, it's looking good. I think that we should probably consider quarterback on the wraparound. Not that we have to make that pick, mostly just because the other options here are so good, right? Like there's still a bunch of great wide receivers at our disposal. I know we don't necessarily want to take a running back here, but if we really want to lean into that kind of hyper fragile build, there's some guys here that should be the lead guys for their teams between Carson, Montgomery, Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin. I don't know. We have an interesting decision point coming up here in round 6. And then after we make that pick, we will do the giveaway for the free FFPC draft coupon.
Oh, nice.
So
good people over here at 4 for 4. You know, we're just giving away money. I like that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we do our best. Anything to incentivize people to fill these darn drafts so that we can do the stream. I mean, we wouldn't be able to draft without you guys in the room with us. So appreciate you all joining the draft. And looking forward to hooking one of you guys up with a draft coupon for another one here at the FFPC.
A little receiver run here.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, honestly, this is about the point of the draft where it gets to be a little overdue, especially like you look at these names that are flying off the board here: Godwin, Julio Jones, like Robert Woods is up there, like just so many good wide receivers. We're up. What do you want to do?
I mean, I think it comes down to Carson versus Cousins. I don't really have a strong lean though. Do you? Like, I think Carson by ADP is like a nice pick and gives us the third lead running back, but we really desperately, I think, need a quarterback.
Yeah, my preference here is would be to take the quarterback just because we're so far at one end of the draft, right? If it comes back to us, we might be looking at, Derek Carr or something like that as our QB2, and I just don't want to end up there. So for me, it would come down to Cousins or Fitzpatrick.
Let's do Cousins then, because he's pretty much locked in. I mean, I don't think Kellen Mond is a real threat to, take him over this year. So let's go Cousins. And now we have a good build. I mean, we have 2 quarterbacks. We have 2 running backs. I think receiver is like the least valuable position in this format.
Totally.
So I feel good about having one.
Yeah. So let's do the giveaway here. And I am going to make the instructions hopefully a little bit more clear this week, because last week there was some confusion. I'm going to ask those of you watching the stream to look something up in the draft room, and then scroll down in the draft room. There's a chat section. This is where you're going to type in the answer to the question. And the first person who types the answer into that chat window in the draft will win a $35 voucher to use at the FFPC. You can use that on another Superflex draft, on a 1 quarterback draft. It's up to you. Just, again, thankful that y'all are drafting with us here on the stream. We appreciate you taking the time on a Wednesday. or Tuesday. Getting my days mixed up. But here's what we're going to look for. I want to know which wide receiver, alphabetically by last name, is the last one to show up in the FFPC draft room. So I'm going to pull that up on the screen. So maybe if I'm not verbally expressing it correctly, you can read it. Alphabetically by last name, who is the last wide receiver in the FFPC player pool? The first drafter to post that answer in the league chat, not the stream chat, will win the FFPC voucher. And Mervin's Bulldo, Michael, was in there very quickly with Isaiah Zuber. That is the correct answer. So
what a pull.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to sort this stuff in the draft window. So we probably did it like before I even finished talking there. Very impressive. Congratulations on winning the draft coupon. I hope that you don't win this league, but you win the other one, because Anthony and I want to win this one. But get at me in one of the chats with a Twitter handle, and then I'll DM you about getting an email address and hooking you up with that coupon. Okay. And thanks again for tuning in and being a part of the draft. Really appreciate you. Anyway, Anthony, let's talk a little bit more about this draft. I do like where our team is at. It seems very balanced to me. And when you have a draft that starts like this, do you maybe worry that it's too balanced? I know that in other formats, you are a big fan of zero RB and kind of taking that very skewed approach to picking positions. Here, we haven't done that at all. Does that make you feel like our upside is at all limited, or is there anything else about this sort of start that makes you uneasy?
No, I mean, I definitely like to be an extreme drafter, but it's a little more difficult to do that in Superflex.
Yeah.
Especially when it's best ball, because it's not even like, if we have a managed league, we can pretty much piece it together. Even in Superflex, I think, at that QB2 spot if we have to. In best ball, you really can't. I mean, you have to have guys that you can get in there for some points. So I think that stress, unless you're going to go extreme QB, makes it really difficult to go with like an extreme strategy. And I don't think at 10 we're really in position to do that at quarterback. So, we still had 2 early running backs. I think that still puts some strain on the rest of the build. And I don't know. I mean, I think it doesn't have to be too extreme to be valuable. I'm going to be comfortable with how we've approached this, I think.
Right. And we can chase upside in different ways, right? With potential stacks, which I do think is going to be possible for us with Burrow. We've already stacked him with Mixon. It's not inconceivable that one of the Bengals wide receivers will, line up correctly ADP wise with where we're drafting. Cousins, we're obviously going to miss out on the Thielen and Justin Jefferson stacks, but there's always Irv Smith. You don't have to stack every quarterback. Right. We are going to try to draft a QB3. We could try to stack with that player. There are other ways you can correlate. Like, one thing I like to do personally is just to stack wide receivers from the same team, even if you don't get the quarterback. Kind of right. The same reason we wanted to stack Mixon and Burrow, right, is just to get that kind of cushion, that coverage. So if one of your guys from that team has a bad week, maybe you can soften that blow by seeing those points go to a different player on your roster. Like, if you really believe in an offense, especially a high volume one like the Bengals, then maybe it doesn't even matter if you get Burrow if you get 2 of his receivers, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we are always looking at that top correlation and we're ignoring the rest. Like, it's always good to do that. I think Leone's made that point a bunch, which is awesome. And especially in Superflex, where it's like, we just need these quarterback scores. Like, it doesn't really matter kind of as much that they're correlated with the players on our roster, as much as us getting those scores in there, because a lot of these scores are going to be pretty similar. So if we get boom weeks from other players, that's fine. We get boom weeks from 2 receivers on our roster on the same team. We don't have the quarterback. That's fine. Like, it's not like we're not going to get quarterback points. They're just not going to be as lined up as maybe some of these other teams. But it's I don't really have a problem with it at all. I think it's better than reaching, especially I think, and again, like in Superflex, every pick matters so much more. ADP matters so much more. Like, it's just a lot harder to reach, I think.
We got a comment here from Dave Gladstone. I mean, maybe this is Dave's team, but Dave says the 3-pick spot is looking good here with McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb. Can't really argue against that start of players. Obviously, that's very, very formidable. Then TJ Hawkinson potentially getting a top 5 tight end looks good. Only one quarterback so far. That's the main concern here, Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I mean, Fitzpatrick, like I said, was the other quarterback I would have considered over Cousins. I probably would have taken Fitzpatrick over Cousins. But again, it's close. Like, and you're the guest, you're going to make those calls. But what do you think about Fitzpatrick? He strikes me as another one of those QBs who the ADP on him doesn't necessarily line up with where Terry McLaurin's being drafted, with where Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas are being drafted, with where the running backs, Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick, are being drafted. Like, this guy has two very good pass-catching running backs, supposedly a top 8 or 9 tight end, and two really good wide receivers. Why is he being drafted so low? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that he's undervalued, the receivers are overvalued, a little bit of both? What's your feel for the Washington offense?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I do like the Washington offense. I'm just not sure that they're going to produce a ton of touchdowns. And Fitzpatrick is also like, I feel like he ends up just being fine. Like he's not someone that I look at and I'm like, oh, well, he's just going to like blow the roof off. He can have his big weeks, but Fitzpatrick also is not someone that I consider to have like elite job security. Like, I mean, I expect him to start. I expect him to start week 1, but it's like if they're losing, like it wouldn't really surprise me if they went to the backups and just try to see what they have. I mean, that's kind of what bad teams do. So I don't know. Like I just don't feel as good about him as I do these other players.
So we are on deck here. I think we could consider QB3 here, if only because this person at the turn only has one. But because the 11 drafter has to, I mean, at most, we're probably going to see 3 quarterbacks get drafted here at this pick. And of the remaining 3, I'd say there are 4 that I'd be okay with. That's my QB3, Wentz, Roethlisberger, Darnold, and Carr. After that, I think it's a drop-off. And it's not to say, like, I have to get one of those guys. Like, I'm fine making our QB3 be someone from, the lower ranks, right? The guys who are potentially splitting time, Winston, Newton, Mac Jones, whatever. So I don't think we have to take a QB here, but it's worth considering. Running backs, some interesting names, but question marks for all these guys: Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter. Wide receivers, where we're going to find the best names, right? Well, actually, there's Thielen. This is a situation where the stack is pretty appealing to me. 30-ish seconds. What's your lean here in the 7th round?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a quarterback or Thielen. I don't know how likely it is that we get Thielen on the way back. I mean, Team 12 does have 3 receivers. Team 11 only has 1. So it's kind of the same situation as a quarterback. I would like to get Thielen, I think, in this build, and we can get a quarterback on the way back.
Yeah, I think that's the play. So we're going to do that. Again, like, I don't differentiate between those quarterbacks very much. And who just got drafted? Who was that? Yeah. Derek Carr went immediately after our Thielen pick. But yeah, like, I don't love Wentz. I don't love Roethlisberger. I don't love Darnold. But I think all of them have a little bit more upside relative to the other quarterbacks who've been drafted ahead of them. Again, quarterback scoring is very, very flat. So the difference between like QB 13 and QB 23 is not that big of a gap.
Strongly agree.
Yeah. I mean, the other question here is, do we just, let it ride a little bit longer on quarterback? And if we look at what the other teams are doing here, Turn Drafter did a little Ben Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson stack. That's pretty smart. I like that. A lot of these other drafters still only have 1 or 2 QBs. I think this is the time where we could consider just taking our 3rd one, feeling really safe about the position, and kind of punishing the other people here for waiting a little bit. It's not a real strong punishment because it just means they get to pivot to taking more good running backs or good wide receivers or good tight ends. It really depends on how much you value that safety associated with getting your 3 quarterbacks locked in. What do you feel about that? Like, do you believe that the advantage of having like a known commodity in Darnold or Wentz is that much more valuable than, say, like ending up with a Winston, a Cam, a Mac Jones, whoever?
Yeah, I do, because we didn't start with elite quarterbacks. So
yeah.
I think we want to have 3 guys that we can
totally
pull from for scores. And I think Wentz is a great value at his ADP versus ADP right now. So I love getting that also.
Yeah. And that's just basic best ball drafting, right? It's like Wentz usually goes higher than this. For some reason in this draft he didn't. I don't like Wentz, but because I'm not paying, the going rate for Wentz in this particular draft, I'm a lot more comfortable making the pick here because it is, a value relative to the market, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he projects for me as like a solid QB2. Like he's right there. I don't really think that like we're giving up a lot. He's gonna have some big weeks. I mean, I think people forget how good Philip Rivers was last year. Like,
sure,
he was incredible, and we're talking about a guy who literally just retired. So, I think that speaks volumes to what this offense can get out of the quarterback position.
Yeah, it does make me wonder if we had, I don't know if you prefer Carr or Roethlisberger to Wentz significantly. Again, I think all three are relatively close. Maybe if one of these two ends up having just that much better of a season than Wentz for some reason, maybe Roethlisberger turns back the clock now that he's fully recovered from that surgery a couple years ago, and his scoring just blows Carson Wentz out of the water. That's how we lose this league, is based upon that inflection point in the draft. But what are the odds of that happening versus the odds that Wentz bounces back? There's no real way to know, and so why take the risk of planting your flag on one or the other? Just take the one that falls and make sure you get the receiver you want in Thielen, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And Thielen wasn't a reach for us. That was about where he goes. He has a little extra value for us. So
this is a great comment from Kevin here. He says, I love getting punished. Last year I was punished into taking Herbert. So yeah, that happened to me in a league too, where I backdoor my way into Tyrod Taylor plus Justin Herbert as a Frankenstein quarterback 3. And of course, by whatever that was, week 8 or whatever, Justin Herbert's the best QB on my roster. It was pretty crazy.
That's incredible. Hey, sometimes you just got to be good,
That's right. So Kevin also chimed in on Wentz here. He's saying, not sure the receiving options are there to unlock a ceiling. And while I generally agree with that, it's not like the receivers are bad. It's not like the receivers are hard to acquire in draft. So there is a lot more stacking potential with Wentz than with some other guys. I don't know. Yeah. Given the option between Wentz and Roethlisberger, I probably would just take Roethlisberger. He's a little bit more proven in my mind. I'm not as worried about the injury this year as I was last year. Maybe that's foolish. Maybe he's just breaking down. He's falling off that age cliff for the quarterback position. But yeah, I'm fine with Wentz too.
Yeah, and again, I think we maybe judge ceiling a little harshly on some of this stuff because he's still going to have multi-TD games. He can still run, hopefully, a little bit. And if you're doing that stuff, a lot of the other stuff I feel kind of works itself out.
So I'm going to go through the draft room here. I'm going to load up the queue with just the top of the running back ranks. And this way, when we're going to make a decision, we can look at the running back side by side with one of the other positions. I think we're in a spot now where we don't even really have to worry about quarterback. And while I think that there is potential to get doing that, maybe there will be a point in the draft where we should consider just taking a 4th QB. For the sake of us drafting a good and reasonable team on the stream, I don't even want to get distracted with it. So we're probably not going to pull up quarterback very often unless we're just kind of looking at, what the other teams are doing. But let's pull the draft board back up. Our team's looking good. It's still very balanced and very safe, I would say. 2 workhorse running backs, a top tight end, 3 quarterbacks, and 2 good wide receivers. I really like this start. This seems really, really solid to me.
Yeah, I feel good about it. Again, maybe we swapped out. Maybe we swap one of the running backs for Russ, and we get a running back over one of our quarterbacks or something. But I think we've done this okay. I don't want to call it a victory yet because I want to see who we get this next turn. But I feel good.
Yeah,
uncomfortable format. We know Superflex makes you uncomfortable, so I feel like if we're okay with that, we accept that going in. We feel pretty good about some of this other stuff.
Yeah. So if you're watching this and you like what you're seeing, if you think this is interesting, I recommend you head over to 4for4.com, get subscribed. And when you do that, you'll get a free voucher to use in one of these drafts. You can try out the Superflex format like we're doing. They have a full roster Superflex format as well, 28 round drafts with kickers and defenses added in as well. Those go super, super deep and are a lot of fun. I prefer to do those as slow drafts rather than these fast drafts with 60-second timers. But there are also 1 QB options, a lot of different ways you can draft at the FFPC. And so if you go get subscribed at 4 for 4, you're going to get a coupon to enter one of these drafts for free. Basically recoups the value of that subscription. If you go on to win your best ball league, you're rolling in value at that point, right? So head over 4 for 4, check it out, and we'll get you hooked up with that FFPC voucher worth up to $35.
Yeah, and are these like the satellites? Like you win this, you get an entry to the main, or is this the best the 350, or is this cash payout? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head if these best ball slim Superflexes are. I can figure that out though as we go.
Yeah, because it's just a good. I guess I'm just trying to promote it a little bit more because I just feel like it's a good, it's a good way to get up in stakes if you're someone that your bankroll's in like this $50 range and down. You can level up a little bit. That's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. And it is an interesting format. It's not the same as what you're going to find in other best ball because of that tight end premium scoring. I think I like it. I like the way that it kind of promotes those elite tight ends into the early round discussion. There is a bit of an overreaction. We mentioned that earlier, where the mid-round tight ends sometimes get pushed up too high. But in general, the way that they've kind of flattened out the positional scarcity or positional value is interesting at the FFPC to me. The one thing I don't like about the Superflex format, and I say that as a person who prefers to play Superflex and 2 QB above all else, is that I think this particular format makes wide receivers a little less interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just less allocation, like that one less spot makes such a big difference because if you have to start 3 receivers every week, you have to prioritize that position. Now you don't really have to.
I think what I would love to see them do is instead of having these be 18-round drafts, just make them 20-round drafts and add a wide receiver spot and a bench spot. I think that would round everything out a little bit better.
Right. Or even just keep the 2 normal flexes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And add the super flex. That could work too.
Right. With the 20, with the extra rounds.
We're up here.
So
running backs on the right, wide receivers on the left. Anybody stand out to you?
I kind of like just getting Boyd here for the stack.
Yep.
Again, not a reach. I'm really high on Tyler Boyd. I mean, I think that he's going a lot later than he should be.
Cheapest wide receiver in that group. Makes sense to me. Let's peek at the tight ends just to see who's available here. Robert Tonyan, Irv Smith, Evan Ingram, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, the top of the ranks.
Do we go for the double tap on the stack and try to get Irv and then
who do you think's more likely to come back, Boyd or Irv? And of course we say this on the stream, so somebody could snipe us, but just in a vacuum, if these people weren't watching us, who do you think would be more likely to come back? I think it's Irv.
All right, let's go Boyd then.
Yeah. And it's hard to do these streams a little bit because of that. Like we can talk about players and get ahead of ourselves a little bit, only to see those players get sniped out from under us. Like there's no way for me to tell or for you to tell if we hadn't mentioned Irv Smith's name, whether one of these people would have taken him. I honestly don't think it really matters if we get Irv. Like I'm just stoked that we got
we have Kittle
with Cousins, and we have Kittle too. So like that's the other reason why like paying up for the tight end here is like not something I'm super, super interested in doing. I'm going to pull the wide receivers back up for that reason, just to make sure we're not missing any other names that really stand out to you. So still a few picks away. We can start throwing out names once it's closer to our actual pick, but we do have some interest in Irv because he stacks with Cousins. I will put him in the queue. I don't know if we want to pick him here necessarily. You can see the running backs, top running backs from FFPC below that. Wide receivers here, a lot of quality names still. And then pull up quarterbacks just to show folks watching who's still available. So if we had passed on, who did we take in the last round? If we had passed on Wentz, we would have been looking at Goff, Newton, Watson as our QB3. Yeah, do you think that maybe one of these guys that went between our last 2 picks plus Goff would have been better than Wentz plus Boyd?
I don't think so. No.
I agree. I think we made the right choice.
It gets so dicey with those guys because I just don't feel as good about the playing time, and I don't know. Like it just.
Yep.
The offense for Detroit is so bad.
That's the thing that I keep coming back to with all of their pieces, even Hawkinson. Like if Hawkinson's the only real true threat there, like he might still get peppered with targets, but is he just going to become Jack Doyle? Like I don't think he's on that level talent-wise. Like I think he's a better player than Jack Doyle, but that's my concern from like a scheme perspective is that teams might just try to take him away, or certain smart teams might. Maybe it doesn't matter in best ball, but that offense, it's just really, really scary to go after. So draft board. This is what the other teams are doing. It's interesting to see how people approach the quarterback position. Like I said, I think this is not indicative of most of the drafts I've done, where there was a lot of restraint on when to draft QBs. We have our first 4 quarterback drafter here at the 12 spot. Shake and bake, added Mac Jones. Most other drafters
that's going to make it tough. Yeah, it's going to make it tough for a couple of these other teams.
Yeah. So again, punishing people can work. I'd rather try to do it the way we did it with a QB3. Like jumping the gun on QB4 is a little sketchy to me, especially, like in tight end premium, we're nearing the point where if you pull up the overall, you're going to see, I guess it's still a lot of QBs and running backs up top. But anyway, we're on the clock here. Irv Smith is still there if we want to make that pick. I like it a lot more here in this round. We can continue stacking. But again, plenty of good wide receivers here, some interesting running backs. What do you want to do, Anthony?
I'm such a sucker for these stacks. Like I'm just trying to figure out what's going to add more points to our roster. Like we take a running back or we take the tight end. Like we're not really expecting Irv to accrue many points for us, like stack aside.
That's the rub, right? If we didn't have Kittle, I would say the stack with Irv makes a lot more sense.
Right.
But is Irv going to be that much better?
I kind of want to take Gus Edwards.
Okay.
Because I really value him in that offense. I think he has touchdown variance upside for us weekly. Kind of like the perfect RB3 with like the really good running backs we already have. Again, he's a flex candidate for us, I think, every week.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about the running backs in that offense, especially now that Mark Ingram is gone. Like I like J.K. Dobbins where he goes. I like Gus Edwards where he goes. Lamar Jackson is my QB2 behind Patrick Mahomes. And I think you could make the argument that Jackson should be number 1 just based on his floor. Like if you're taking a quarterback in the first round, and again, it's not to say Mahomes doesn't have an incredible floor, right? But that rushing production you get from Jackson, I think, makes him just as intriguing. I think those two are pretty clearly my QB1 and QB2, like kind of the top tier. But yeah, with that rushing threat from the quarterback, especially in that Baltimore offense, you just get that. It just sets up the running back so well, even on limited touches like Edwards theoretically is going to have sharing with Dobbins. Like I just don't care. I think they're going to be so efficient with those touches it won't matter.
Yeah, and you look at last year what they did. It was, I think it's like 13 rushes a game for Dobbins, 11.6 for Edwards without Ingram. Like I think this is going to be really close. And the receiving work definitely I would assume is going to slant towards Dobbins, but if they don't have like a preferred back at the goal line, I mean Edwards could have multiple 2-touchdown weeks. He could have, we know he busts off long runs. Like he's been efficient for his career, and obviously a big part of that is Lamar, like you said.
Kevin O'Brien is the all-star of the chat right now. Just throwing out Conklin over Irv takes.
It's definitely possible. I'll tell you, I'm projecting them much closer now than I was a month ago. So,
yeah, I think the larger point about us drafting Kittle in the second round is the real reason why we didn't need to take a tight end there. As much as we would have liked to stack Irv with Kirk Cousins, I guess the counterpoint to that would be that because it is tight end premium, there will be weeks where, Irv Smith will just outscore a certain number of wide receivers that we might have on our roster.
Sure.
And so Kittle will slot into the tight end spot, and Irv or whoever our second tight end is will slot into the flex spot. And in that case, if it's a big game for Irv, a big game for Kittle, big game for Irv probably means a relatively good or big game for Cousins. There's that correlation you're looking for. There's that high-end ceiling you're looking for. So, yeah, I can see it both ways. But I like the Gus Edwards pick more. In general, I think our roster needed to go back to running back more than it needed to go back to tight end.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had to make a tough call because my whole ethos is just like stack, and then
yeah. So we did get clarity on the Mac Jones pick being an auto pick as well, so that explains that. But Mac Jones and Cam Newton both taken here in the 10th round. What's your read on that QB situation? Like, who do you think is going to win that job in week 1, and then who do you think is going to start more games over the course of the season between Cam Newton and Mac Jones?
It's tough to say that Cam isn't going to start week 1, but I think even if that happens, like, I think Jones is going to start more games. I think I have it projected like 12-5 or something like that for Mac. Like, I know they have the late bye, which maybe like obscures that timeline a little bit, but I just think that they want to have a pocket passer. Like, I think they made some changes to the offensive weaponry. I think that it's going to be pretty flexible in terms of like having the 2 tight end sets, all that stuff. But I mean, they did the Cam thing last year. I think Cam's fine, but I think that they know that if they want to really move the ball, like, they got to throw it a lot better. And Mac Jones is the guy that can do that. I mean, he completed so many passes last year in the SEC. Like, I think he's legit #good, I think.
Yeah. I just kind of glanced around at the room, and what caught my eye was this Robert Tonyan and Evan Ingram double tap at tight end here in the 10th and 11th. And I got to say, I really like the way that this team is shaping up from the 2-hole. Mahomes up top, kind of a gift after Josh Allen goes first overall. Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, and Robert Tonyan stacked together. You talked about the potential upside of Daniel Jones. I think that if Jones hits that, Evan Ingram will be part of the reason. I know that you have a little bit of love for Ingram this season. And then the running backs look solid. Najee Harris, Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Javonte Williams. Like, that's a solid squad, man. That might be some of our toughest competition so far. A lot of draft left, but I like that start. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's a legit team, no question. Ingram is like really far down in these rankings, which I don't get. Like, I still think he's like a borderline tight end 1 with like high catch upside. Like what if Darius Slayton just stinks? What if
does he though? Because he's been good, like, especially
no. Yeah.
Really
I'm not saying that he is, but I'm just saying, like, what if they're just like, we don't like Darius Slayton. Like, we drafted Kadarius Toney. We want Toney to play. He's a little raw. I don't know. Can we take Irv here now? That
we have to, yeah. Like, we talked about him so much that like we're just gonna push the button. And we don't have to think about it too hard. The running backs here are not quite as appealing. I guess I should add a little bit more action to the queue here so we can see the larger landscape of the position. So running back, we're getting into like the handcuff and timeshare range. There's value to be had here, though, no doubt about it. Like, either by injury or by overperformance, depth chart shenanigans. Like, some of these guys are going to pop. Wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, top of the board here. We talked about the Lions as an offense that's one to be wary of. Houston definitely fits that bill, but he might just get so many targets it won't matter. But yeah, wide receivers actually thinned out pretty significantly in my estimation.
No question.
I'm curious to see what you want to do with this pick because the options are not quite as appealing as they were even 1 or 2 rounds ago.
Yeah, I have a couple of leans here coming up, so we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see who makes it to us. The board to me is very interesting, especially with like the FFPC default ADP. So I have a couple guys I like.
Good. So let's look at some of these other teams. Let's see what Kevin is doing here from the 7th spot. Started Herbert Eckler, we mentioned that. Then he took Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, Jamar Chase. So he's the one who got the rest of our stacking options there. Again, not that we were ever going to get those guys necessarily to pair with Cousins because we would have had to take them before Kevin did. Josh Jacobs, not sure how you feel about him. A lot of people have soured on Jacobs, but I think 7th round is fine. Darnold is the QB2. I think there's upside there. That's another guy kind of like Fitzpatrick, where I look at where the receivers are going and I say, why is Sam Darnold going so low? And unlike Fitzpatrick, I think that we're going to see a lot more tempo from that Panthers offense. Like, there might just be way more volume for Darnold. I don't know if that's for sure, especially with McCaffrey there soaking up a lot of touches. But a lot of McCaffrey's touches are going to be through the air too. So I think the upside of that Darnold pick is nice. Gesicki is a fine tight end one for waiting until the 9th. Will Fuller, Naheem Hines, some potential for big plays and big weeks there, which I like. This squad for Kevin's coming together well too.
Yeah, some good teams in here, man. We're gonna be having a rock fight on our hands, I think.
When everybody is measured and sharp about the quarterback drafting, all the teams end up being better.
Right.
It's funny how that works. Like, yeah, it's always fun to see. Okay, on deck here. Not sure if you want to start talking about who you like. If it's down to like 2 or 3 names, but we could also just wait to see what our advanced person does here ahead of us. I'll pull up the quarterbacks.
Is the timer frozen for you?
It sure looks like it. Let's do a little refresh of the draft room. The draft board also appears to be frozen.
Great.
I don't believe we have been autoed yet. It would have given us Zach Moss if it did. Still frozen though. Let's. I invoke do-over. We are. Maybe the whole draft is frozen because it still shows that person on.
Yeah, it's frozen, and it's frozen on mine also. So I don't think it's
interesting. Yeah, so in the chat here, we're seeing other people say that it's frozen. So not entirely sure what's going on here.
Oh boy. There's no commissioner for this. Like I don't, you know what I mean?
There really isn't. This is great live stream content right now, by the way.
This is incredible.
I mean, while we wait, I might try to do some little housekeeping behind the scenes to figure out if we can get a hold of somebody at the FFPC. But is there anything you want to promote that you've been working on, like pieces you've released recently, pieces that you have upcoming, either established around Footballguys or anywhere else? I know you got a Substack too. Like anything else you want to shout out while we're stalled out here? Although it looks like the time is moving. But yeah, feel free to plug.
No, I mean, I think I'm just, I'm trying to work through a little bit of best ball content at Footballguys, and we have the dynasty ranks. We update them every 2 weeks. And aside from that, it's kind of as the ideas come, like I got to get better about like completing some projects. I have some projects in limbo right now.
I know how that goes. All right, we are on the clock. The draft has resumed. Running backs on the right, wide receivers on the left.
Yep. I think we take Jamal Williams here. I think
love it.
I think he's a good value.
We talked a bunch of trash about the Lions, and now we're going to take one of the running backs.
Well, all the buzz is good. Like I think he's one of those.
He was good last year. Like I test in Green Bay. Jamal Williams was a legit player in 2020.
So I mean, we could have taken Pollard. That was kind of my other thought. We'll take another running back, and it'll be Pollard. But I just feel a lot better about Jamal's like range of outcomes. Like I think Pollard's going to contribute this year for Dallas, but like the Zeke thing is just like he can be as dusty as he wants. Like he's getting the ball, and he's going to score all the touchdowns, and it's just like you're going to shower cry every week, hoping that the guy that you have is the right guy, and it's just never going to be Pollard. So I'm just gonna
if it's not Zeke, it's going to be Dak, right? One of the receivers. Like it's just not going to be Pollard in on those goal to go situations.
Right. And like we can
get some token touches, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. Like Detroit's not going to score that much, but we can definitely see a world where Jamal Williams gets the goal line stuff. We can definitely see a world where Anthony Lynn is like, you're my Melvin Gordon and DeAndre Swift is my Alvin Kamara. And this is how we're rolling it. And all of a sudden you have like a 250 touch running back. Like that could happen.
From like looking at the way that we drafted so far, like if we had taken someone else other than Gus Edwards, like I feel like Gus Edwards was our Tony Pollard pick, right? We take that guy who's in a part-time role who has upside to outkick that coverage. If we had taken James Robinson, Melvin Gordon, Raheem Mostert, like Damian Harris, like more of a floor play, someone who's like more in line to be kind of their team's primary rusher, but maybe with not quite the same efficiency upside as Edwards, then maybe I think you swing for the fences with Pollard over Williams in this spot. But because we went like ceiling with this Edwards pick, I think going floor with Williams a couple rounds later does make some sense. It's trying to find that balance. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think that this frees us up a little bit at running back also. Like we have 4 guys who are going to contribute. So I think we can really focus on like what is our position of most need and not have to worry as much about like fulfilling that position.
Well, and again, we've drafted such a balanced opening here that like best player available is an overused phrase, and like who even knows what the hell that actually means. But we kind of can take that sort of mentality to, you're right, like say, okay, what position do we need the most? Which players are best at their positions? How do we weigh those two things against each other to make the best picks?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just shocked that I'm drafting a team with Anthony Amico and we only have 3 wide receivers through round 12. This is like, we are off the deep end here. This is not what I expected.
Well, I've gotten, I think I just get a bad rap on the zero RB streets because everyone assumes that I'm just a zero RB fanatic. Like, I'm unwilling to change. I'm unwilling to adapt. And I'm here to tell you it's not true. Like, I'm just willing to make the best decisions for our roster. And today was not zero RB.
Yeah, this format just doesn't lend itself to that. I mean, I actually think that there is an argument for a type of zero RB approach here, except instead of just drafting all receivers and tight ends, like you're just drafting elite quarterbacks early,
right.
Maybe trying to stack them with elite wide receivers. Like you go like the Mahomes, Tyreek Hill route, or you go the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs route, add a bunch of other, high-end receivers and tight ends to that mix, and then you kind of shotgun spread the running back through the middle rounds or late rounds. The position we were in, 10th pick, those quarterbacks were not available to us. So I think we made a good call here. We'll see how it plays out though. Like I said, a lot of draft left. I'm feeling from a roster construction perspective, we probably don't want another tight end. We probably don't want another quarterback. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like at some point, I don't want to just completely rule it out, but we're at the quarterback spot where it's backups basically, or fringe starters, or Watson's there who we're not really sure if he's going to play. Like I don't. There's a lot of questions out there.
Yeah. I guess because we're not planning to take any of these guys, like maybe we could quickly just give me like a rapid fire answer here. Like who you think is going to win out in these positions for their teams? Like New Orleans, are you a Winston or a Hill guy?
I'm kind of a Hill guy. Now, I don't know, like in like the betting markets, Winston is like a huge favorite. So like I could just be completely wrong. But like the way I'm looking at it is like if Winston starts, Hill's still going to play. If Hill starts, like Winston's probably not going to play. So like the upside that you can get on Hill, just like strictly game theory wise in fantasy, I prefer. But I also think that Sean Payton just loves Taysom Hill. Like how many like terrible interceptions does Jameis Winston have to throw before he's just like, forget it. Like we have Taysom Hill. Like I don't need to do this. Like I just feel like that's so valuable for them.
Yeah, and even if Hill doesn't take over as like the starting QB, he's still going to come in so many of those like red zone packages that he could just totally tank the value of Winston in general. Like Winston could still be fine in a Superflex format like this, but every time a Winston drafter loses a touchdown to Taysom Hill on the goal line, it's going to be so tilting. Like every time, like I don't know if that's something I want to deal with.
And I think that the concerns about what he does to the receivers is a little overblown. Like I genuinely think that Taysom Hill is, even if he's not like an actual good quarterback, like he's clearly manageable in that offense. Like he was really good last year throwing the ball.
Yeah, no, he definitely outproduced my expectations by a lot, to be honest. Like, I thought he was just some sort of gadget gimmick player, and he really held his own. A lot of that, again, was tied to the threat that he poses as a runner. But I mean, that's the same reason we like a lot of these other quarterbacks too, whether it's someone like as elite at running as Lamar Jackson, or someone like Josh Allen, who even going into last year was not a high pick and finished as, one of the three best quarterbacks, the best quarterback. So
Right.
I don't think Hill has that same upside, but he has the upside to outproduce where he's being drafted if he ends up being that kind of every week starter, primary starter for New Orleans. We're on deck again and looking at a variety of wide receiver 2 types, wide receiver 3 types, as well as some more handcuff running backs. I guess David Johnson would be the one exception to that rule. I don't know how you see that Houston running back situation playing out, but Johnson was fine last year. I expect he could be kind of their primary guy again this year. What do you want to do with this pick?
I would like to take T.Y. Hilton for the stack with Wentz. I still project Hilton to be their top receiver. Like, I think Pittman going over him is incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Hilton was fine last year. So, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be a world beater. He's probably going to miss some time, but there's really not a lot else out there.
As our wide receiver 4 in a stack with his quarterback.
Right. We have 3 stacks now.
Yeah. Like that's the nice thing about spreading out the stacks, is that in any given week, we could correlate in a lot of different ways, which if everything lines up well, like that's going to be great. One thing I didn't think to look at were bye weeks for our quarterbacks, and thankfully they are staggered.
Yeah, I've been
7,
looking.
14, 10. Okay, yeah, and that's the only real position I think you need to worry about it in these best ball slims. I guess tight end to some extent too. Like if Kittle and Irv Smith had the same bye week, that would make us need to go back and draft a third tight end. But like wide receiver and running back, I'm probably just not ever looking at buys really. In this particular format. It's not to say you shouldn't ever look at them, but again, like when you have to make these decisions so quick, like you have to take some shortcuts. But it's back to us.
I'm a pretty big bye week maxi. Like I'm always looking at the buys because I just think you want to maximize the number of scores you have access to every week. So that's usually why I look. But here I'd say, I mean, I'm infatuated with Rondell Moore, so I would love to add him to our roster. I think him and Bateman are both good picks here, honestly. Like I think the rookie receivers in general are a little undervalued at this juncture, but I think especially since this is full PPR, I think that plays to more strengths. I would expect him to fill like the Larry Fitz role this year, but he's actually like pretty good. So I
just want pieces of that offense. Like, yeah, say what you will about Cliff Kingsbury. Wow, just still in early preseason form for me here. Cliff Kingsbury's like leader of men qualities, like head coaching sort of ability, but his offense is going to run a ton of plays and they're going to pass it a lot. And Rondell Moore is going to theoretically figure prominently into that. Like that, just chasing that volume again. If you get that Larry Fitzgerald target share from a wide receiver in the 14th round, even if that is an unknown commodity, a rookie in Rondell Moore, like, I don't care. Like, give me that. I think, actually I just read something good. I think it was Pat Kerrane on NBC
I was just about to reference
Sports Edge.
that.
Yeah, well, why don't you talk about it? Because that was your pick, and I kind of didn't even cross my mind that we should be thinking rookie wide receiver there.
No, I mean, I Pat's point, like if I was to summarize it neatly, it would just be that the rookie receivers improve as time goes on. Like they are league winners. Like they are players who are out producing their ADP. They are, they have some breakout upside. Like I think like the notion on rookie wide receivers generally is that they need some time. And I think maybe even more importantly, like when we're attacking rookie receiver, like maybe a little too focused on just the top couple guys. But actually, like outside of last year, which was already a really good rookie receiver year, like there's plenty of rookie receivers every year that give you access to high ceilings at their ADP.
For sure. Yeah, I think back to Brandon Ayook last year who only played 12 games and had like a top 8 win rate among wide receivers, just because when he played, Kittle and Deebo Samuel were out a lot of that time, and he was just a target hog and fresh legs, explosive, good offense. Like, does this sound a little bit like the situation Rondell Moore is in? It does to me.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking high draft pick. Doesn't look like the Isabella thing's working out, but he has like a clear role. Like Cliff Kingsbury has been a real stickler for like what guys play what roles. I know, like as an Isabella guy, it's been tough because
he
like didn't want Isabella in the slot, and like those targets were open, and he wasn't letting Isabella take those routes. So like Moore is the guy that is going to play that spot. Like there is no question about it. So I expect him to play, like play starter snaps. And if you know anything about the air raid, like the air raid really does flow through these slot guys more than the outside guys. Like we saw Cliff Kingsbury trade for DeAndre Hopkins and then literally just stick him on one side of the field and have him run like 3 or 4 different routes. Like this is not a complicated offense, and a lot of the edges that you get are going to be in the middle with the crossing routes and all that stuff, and that's Rondell Moore eat time. So I mean, I'm not saying he's going to like outproduce DeAndre Hopkins anytime soon, but I think he's going to be the clear number 2 in this offense. And you mentioned the play rate and all that stuff. Like I just think that there's a ton of upside here, especially weekly for like those high catch games because of the ADOT, but also because of his speed. Like he has that big play upside also.
Yeah, I was a big Christian Kirk guy last year, kind of hoping for that same sort of just high volume potential. And he flashed it at times, but just never quite delivered. And I don't know, the blooms come off that rose a little bit. I'm still interested in Kirk because his stock has just plummeted. And he was a relatively good prospect coming out of college, so I don't think we should necessarily give up on him yet. But
sure.
Yeah, Rondell Moore just as appealing. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I'm
okay.
Good.
Well, that's great. I love when people do that.
Yeah. Hey, it's your show. I got it.
So, quick tangent here. Kevin's asking you how the R programming is going, Anthony.
It's good. I was asking Kevin about like some NFL stuff, like scraping some data, and I actually haven't even done that yet because I'm doing like 2 or 3 other projects right now. But the R stuff is good. I mean, I'm like elbow deep in Shiny and trying to like build out apps and stuff like that because I really enjoy doing that. So it's great, man. R's awesome. Like if you're looking to get into coding, I mean, I guess I can't say much for Python. I know people love Python also, but I've really enjoyed my experience with R.
I've got a little experience from the day job real world arena with Python, and it's pretty powerful, but it does seem like, just maybe, the biased opinion that I get from the Twitter timeline is that R is the way to go with some of this NFL stuff and the sports betting stuff. But I mean, I'm a spreadsheet guy. Like just give me a Google Doc. Here's one that I got. Just kind of pulled up. Just fantasy scoring since 2012. Got a little drop down here. Nothing fancy. We can see that Jameis Winston over the past 4 years has an average top 20 rate of about 69.2%.
Nice.
Anyway, that's my thing. But yeah, not nearly as cool or useful as R. Or maybe not. I shouldn't say it's not as useful. Like spreadsheets are definitely very useful.
Spreadsheets are so useful. Yeah, I think they get a bad rap. I don't think that like there's stuff you don't have to go to the sophisticated languages to do. Like sometimes you want to just change stuff in a spreadsheet.
All right, coming up with the next pick, and we are on the clock.
We're up. Yeah, this is I'm a little flummoxed here. I think that by like in terms of value, Singletary is probably our best pick. But I don't necessarily know if we need a running back. Like I feel like we really would prefer to get a receiver. I just don't really see the value. So maybe we just take Singletary and we grab a receiver on the wrap.
Okay. Let's look at tight end just to make sure that there isn't some guy that we randomly want to make as our tight end 3.
Do you want a third tight end?
I don't. I'm just kind of for the sake of making sure we're checking all our options. I'm just going to kind of filter through all the different positions here. I'm okay with the Singletary pick. I think once we take him, we don't have to take any more running backs. It's not to say we won't, but I think that that's again kind of a nice way to lock us into a certain type of build, roster construction wise. We only have 3 picks left, so it's not like we have a ton of flexibility anyway. But being able to say that we are safe, I think, at every position now. Like we don't necessarily need to take another tight end or running back or quarterback. We have 5 wide receivers. I do think we need to take at least 2 more wide receivers just for the variance upside of that position. Definitely. And then we kind of have a free spot to throw at whatever other position we want, whether that's another wide receiver or a different position. Does that make sense to you? Does that kind of approach speak to your sensibilities here?
No, that jives with me completely. I'm definitely game for that.
Pour one out for spreadsheets. Different type of pour. All right. Coming back to us here. Do you want to take one of those wide receivers at this point? Like Traquan is a little interesting to me. I just talked about how I'm still kind of a Kirk guy, and I talked earlier about how I like stacking receivers from the same team. I think taking Kirk to go with Rondell Moore actually makes some sense. Again, just kind of cushioning and making sure that we have more pieces of that high volume offense. But again, this is kind of you're the guest. What do you want to do here?
So I actually just think Terrace Marshall is just better than all these guys. I think he's going to see like a decent amount of targets right away. So that's kind of my lean here, and he continues with our bye week diversity. So I like him. I mean, unless you're like super opposed to him.
Nope. Let's do it. I haven't drafted him a whole lot. That is kind of a bet on Sam Darnold, though, isn't it? To say like Sam Darnold is going to be able to run that offense functionally, or maybe you're just a big PJ Walker guy. I don't know. Like, what do you think about
imagine
that?
Imagine not being a fan of the XFL GOAT PJ Walker, but I the thing that I really like about Carolina is that like this Joe Brady offense is one of the most concentrated offenses in the league, maybe the most concentrated offense, just in terms of like last year it was Robbie Anderson, it was DJ Moore, it was Curtis Samuel, it was Christian McCaffrey when he was in there. If not, it was whatever, Mike Davis, whoever, and like that was it. Like they didn't throw the tight end that much, they didn't use a 4th receiver that much. Like they were incredibly concentrated. So they go out and they draft Marshall in the 2nd round. Marshall's a guy who, maybe it was the 3rd round, but Marshall's a guy who has experience with Joe Brady, had an awesome season under Joe Brady at LSU. And I just feel like he's a guy that is going to be comfortable in this offense right away. So I like his upside a lot this year. I'm taking a lot of formats, but if I'm like, obviously if I have Darnold, like if I'm Kevin, then yeah, like I'm definitely smashing Marshall if I can get him.
Draft room was hanging a little bit for me, so I had to reboot it again. We appear to be on the move once again, which is good. Really, I'm just trying to add more running backs to our queue here, just so we can stack them up against the wide receiver position. Now, when you're running through a draft client like this, Anthony, I talked a little bit about this with Chris Allen last week. What is your preferred way to use the queue? Like I've been kind of doing it for the sake of what makes the stream a little easier to view. Like we can compare one position to another. But how do you organize players in a queue when you're drafting in a league like this?
I'm typically looking to like load up. So it depends. Like in the beginning of the draft, I just don't want to like mess up. So like the guys, like my top few guys, I try to keep
just
them
overall rankings.
Yeah. And then as the draft goes on, I'm probably just loading it up by position. So I'll do what you did here with the running backs, kind of. Maybe not as many, but I'll load those guys up, and I'll do the same thing at every other position. So I'll kind of just try to keep it as like at this stage of the draft, like who are the guys that I'm willing to draft, like end sentence.
Yes.
And those are the guys I want in the queue, organized by position, and that's pretty much how I do it.
Right, and that's why like doing a stream like this, I don't necessarily want to tip, by only putting in like the 5 running backs that I would draft here. So I'm just loading it up so we can kind of look at it. This is the point in the draft, though, where it's nice to get values relative to ADP. Like if I pull up the like all players, we've got Rashad Penny here supposedly has an ADP of 176 in this format. Like he should have been drafted by now, right? But at the same time, you kind of just want to find the right player to fit your build, whether that's based upon their scoring profile projection, the bye weeks, the stacking potential, whatever. So I'm much more willing to dig deeper into the rankings to find a player I like. Like, honestly, these top 2 running backs don't appeal to me at all. Like Rashad Penny, I think, is slipping for a reason. Like the health just has never been there for him. Philip Lindsay doesn't catch passes, plays for the Houston Texans. Like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of just out on that guy, even though, relative to value, he's an ADP, or relative to ADP, he's a value. Falling apart, man. It's been a long day. But yeah, like I think you need to be careful with in the later rounds, not really paying as much attention to ADP. I think it matters less.
Definitely. Yeah, way more variance. Like if we had the standard deviation data, I'm sure it would be like way bigger at this stage than the early stages. So
we've talked a lot about the rookie wide receivers, excuse me. What's your feel for the second year guys? Because I'm looking at the wide receiver ranks here. I see Paris Campbell, Denzel Mims, KJ Hamler a little further down. Like for the same reasons we like rookie wide receivers, I think that you can make a case for some of these second-year wide receivers. Not all of them. Again, like team context matters. Like KJ Hamler, playing with Teddy Bridgewater theoretically is not something I'm super interested in. But, Denzel Mims was with Zach Wilson. Like that's more appealing to me. Paris Campbell, especially for us with Carson Wentz on the roster, like I can get behind him at this cost. Do you think that maybe there could be some undervaluing of the second-year guys, especially those who disappointed in year 1, like Campbell and Mims?
Yeah, it's definitely viable. Campbell, I think, is actually going into year 3, but yeah, like
I got him and Pittman mixed up. I think,
it's a tough. Yeah, Pittman's their guy, but it's a tough balancing act, I think, because like if guys are playing, they have to show something. Like it's really difficult, I think, to excuse that. In the case of a guy like Mims, like I'm a little worried because we had a regime change in the coaching staff. They signed a receiver, they drafted a receiver. Like Mims literally could not start this year. Like that's very possible. So I have some concerns there from the playing time, but yeah, like generally speaking, I think second-year receivers are fine buys. They can make pretty big leaps, obviously, in that second season. We see that every year. I think out of the guys you mentioned, like Hamler is maybe the most intriguing, just because like maybe they do go out and get an Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson or someone. If they make a big change at quarterback, I think that kind of raises the ceiling there, because he's a big play guy. I mean, he's someone who extends the defense vertically and can make long plays. And I always like guys like that.
So we're a few picks away here. Anybody standing out to you? Do you want me to pull up any other positions here? Like, I guess we can audit QB real quick again. Like, we don't need a QB4, especially not these guys who are available. So we'll just move on. Tight end 3, again, like just none of these names are guys that I think are worth it. So it does come back again to wide receiver and running back in my mind. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's where I'm at also. And I just typically, I think that because since we got like the 2 early running backs, I don't think we need any more running backs. Like I think we could go receiver 17 and 18 and call it a day. Because our receivers are a little weaker. I mean, we have guys like Evans and Thielen and Boyd who hopefully are in position to be productive, especially with the quarterbacks that we have. But you mentioned it earlier, like you just want to have a little bit more depth at receiver than at the other positions because of the variance.
Yeah, it does make me wonder though, because like we did take those 2 high-end running backs. We expect them to be scoring for us most weeks. Yeah, like Gus Edwards, Jamal Williams, Devin Singletary. There's not a ton of safety with those guys. Like I like all those guys where we drafted them, but if Kamara or Mixon goes down, like if we're not taking any more running backs, we're basically telling ourselves that, if one of these 2 top running backs goes down, we're probably not winning this league. And that's fine. It's a best ball. Like all you really care about is finishing at the top. So I get that, but I do wonder if there is an argument to be made for like getting one more running back just for a little bit more balance. But let's play it out your way, and at the end of the season, we'll see how we do. Which wide receiver you want to target with this first of our last two picks? And I can scroll down here too if you want to see more names.
I mean, I guess it's not a tournament, so I mean, I guess we could take another running back.
Not a tournament is correct. I mean, do any of these names stand out to you? Like that's the other question.
I mean, I love Kenny Gainwell. That's the thing. Like I love him. I think he's fantastic.
What do you like about him? I actually don't know a ton about him, and I'm gonna have to watch a lot of Eagles living here in Eastern Pennsylvania.
He's just a really productive player at Memphis, and then opted out last year.
Okay.
So, like, I think he slipped in the draft a little bit because of that. And he's going into a situation where he can.
All right, we're pulling the trigger. Welcome to the team, Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, like, so I'm looking at Gainwell as someone who, like, right away has a role. Like, I think that it's him, it's obviously Sanders, and then like one of those bigger backs like Howard or Kerryon Johnson will make the team. But like Nick Sirianni in Indy used like a running back rotation really heavily with Jonathan Taylor, who I think is better than Miles Sanders. Not a hot take. So like I would expect these other backs to play. Gainwell has a diversified skill set. I think he's a day 2 pick. Like I think he has a day 2 talent. I think the fact that he didn't play last year as an opt-out slipped him into day 3, because I think that was like a big point of emphasis for a lot of these GMs and front offices, especially at that position. So I think that Gainwell is someone who could, by the end of the season, have a pretty decently sized role. And with Hurts there, you're getting kind of like that same bonus that you get with Lamar in Baltimore. So I'm hoping that this works out to be like a similar dynamic as like the Sanders Gus Edwards dynamic.
So I think we both agree this last pick is going to be a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And you can tell that the position is a little devalued in this format by the names that are still available in this range. Like I understand it's only 18 rounds, but a lot of these guys are really viable best ball options. Hamler, we mentioned him earlier. Desean Jackson. Like I think this late you can make a case for Sammy Watkins there in Baltimore, even though the volume is going to be low. Like if he ends up being the primary wide receiver there, like I don't know, that could pay off. We talked about Darius Slayton earlier. I think that he's a value here. Even again, like I'm not a Daniel Jones guy, but he's shown flashes, and it wouldn't take too much of a leap of faith to think that he could outproduce a last round pick in this format. Like where's your brain go when you have all these different options with pluses and minuses in their favor kind of across the board?
Yeah, I think it's just about finding, for me, first of all, like I want to get that bye week diversity if I can. And then I'm just looking to see like who has either the best path to volume or like the outrageous efficiency case. Like that's a case you'd make obviously for a Hamler or a Desean Jackson.
Jackson, I worried about the health. Like that's I hasn't been healthy since what, 2013.
Yeah.
So
health has been a real issue. I mean, I think in the last round, Jamison Crowder is a really good deal. Like,
yeah,
I think he's going to start, and he's been good. Like, he's a good player. So I kind of like him, especially in full PPR. Like, there's the volume case. Like, I think oftentimes we look at upside the wrong way. Like, we're looking at just big plays. Like, we're thinking, okay, upside, Desean Jackson, 80-yard touchdown. But, like, upside, Jamison Crowder, 8 catches. Like that's going to get you a really good score.
Yeah, just 8 scoring weeks, right? Like don't even think about it in terms of like the actual stats or the actual points. Just think about how often is his score going to be good enough to land in your lineup. And he has the upside to do that across a larger portion of the season based upon that profile of catching a lot of passes. So not a pick that I would have come into, I don't think, but I like the logic there. That makes sense to me. So let's pull up the draft board here again, and we can review our team one last time here before we sign off. And started off with Kamara, Kittle, Mixon. I really like the Mixon pick in hindsight. Like I don't think we needed to take a QB there. We played that well, ended up with Burrow on the wraparound. I'm really excited that we got kind of 3 locked-in starters theoretically between Burrow, Cousins, and Wentz. I guess something could go sideways for Wentz again or for Cousins with Kellen Mond. But I mean, those are low likelihood outcomes, right?
Yep.
Tight ends, Kittle and Irv together is a nice package. Our wide receivers are very deep, even if they're not top heavy. And I think you could, like, if we get the right type of season from Evans, Thielen, like this could be top heavy enough. But I think that is the weakness of this team. We just addressed it with volume of players, right? Like, we don't have a ton of guys that I think are capable of like making that Justin Jefferson leap. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Rondell Moore is that guy or Terrace Marshall is that guy. But I don't know. That's kind of where I come at this team from. But we've talked about it all draft long. Wide receiver is the least important position in this format, right?
Yep. Yeah. If you're going to do this, you do it at receiver. Least importance, high level of variance. I think we're in a good position. I just really, really like that we got 3 stacks with our 3 quarterbacks. I think it's really difficult to do that.
Yes.
Like between the super flex value with the quarterbacks and the fact that like it's harder to go for those stacks. Talk about that earlier. Like it's even more difficult to reach for stacks and complete stacks because like you just have so many needs all up and down the board. So for us to have kind of done that within the flow of the draft, I think was really good.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like especially with the tight end, we talked about how Kittle kind of nerfs the value of Irv Smith, but because we got that stack of Irv with Kirk Cousins, like Irv could be a flex play when Cousins is a scoring quarterback for us. And you can make that same argument for Wentz and Hilton, for Burrow and Boyd. Like there's just a lot of opportunity for different correlation across those 3 stacks to where in any given week, because it's Superflex, we could have 2 of those quarterbacks correlating with 2 of our weapons and really have a nice outcome over the course of the season. Like I think that while the team to me generally looks boring, like it has just kind of a lot of boring players, especially like the Evans and Thielen types and Boyd at wide receiver. Like we kind of know who these guys are, and they're not probably going to do what, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley do, but they don't have to do that every week. They just have to do that some of the weeks, and they have to stagger it with each other, right? For us to find that top overall finish payoff in this best ball, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, sometimes the stuff that we can't control, the distribution of the points, we want to run good there, but I think we put ourselves in a good position to do it.
For sure. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Anthony. I really appreciate you coming on the stream with me. Folks, you can see it on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Follow Anthony on Twitter at Amicsta. You can check out his work over at Establish the Run and at Footballguys. It's been great doing this with you, man. We'll have to do it again sometime. Anything you want to say or plug before we call it quits here?
No, I mean, thanks for having me, man. Always great to talk to you. I love doing this, so we'll definitely do it again sometime soon. And just check all the content and stuff coming out on Twitter, on ETR, and over at Footballguys.
Yeah, and of course, get over to 4for4.com. Check out all the content that we have. If you don't already have a subscription at 4for4.com, click that red button up in the top right-hand corner of the page. Subscribe to whichever plan suits your needs, and you will get a free FFPC voucher worth up to $35. So you can do one of these drafts that we just did when you get a sub at 4for4.com. I will be back again next week on Wednesday, June 30th. I think this is going to be the last Wednesday show next week. I'll be joined by John Daigle from NBC Sports Edge. John is a ton of fun to draft with. I'm looking forward to doing one of these with him. Before that, you can tune in again to Best Ball Live again on Thursday to see James Coe and Rich Rebar draft an underdog best ball. Different format, different sort of outcomes you're going to see there compared to what you saw today. And be sure to follow the site at 4for4 Football. You can follow me at Greg Sauce. It's been a ton of fun doing this. Thank you all for watching. Really appreciate you taking the time. We will catch you next week. Adios.